Hello and welcome to the Civil War Podcast Review. I'm your host, Grant Miller, and it's very nice to have you with us today. Today we're going to cover Prince John Bankhead Magruder, and let's kick it off. John Bankhead Magruder was born 1807 in Virginia, in Port Royal, and near Fredericksburg and those areas. And he was one of eight children, and he his middle name, uh, Bankhead, was his mother's maiden name, and his uncle on his mother's side, James Bankhead, as well as his grandfather on his mother's side, also named James Bankhead. Both of them served in the U.S. military. The uncle in the War of 1812, the grandfather in the Revolutionary War, and so uh, John, since an early age, was quite taken with military, and this is why when he came to age, he joined. He went and applied at West Point and got in. He really enjoyed West Point. From what I read, he liked the discipline. He liked the order. He liked the times, like you get up at this time, have lunch at that time, go to class here, do exercises then. And it really appealed to him. Now, his first year wasn't, he was a bit of having trouble with authority. He almost got expelled. He was like one demerit to go, and he could have been expelled. But he was able to recoup and finished out his year. And he graduated 15 out of 42. So a little bit above average, right? And so, which was good. Now, after after graduation, he started to date and court a daughter of a wealthy German businessman, and her name was Henrietta von Kopf and Kopf. And so, and they married and had some children. They were, I believe that they were very happily married through their lives. She had to make a number of trips. She at first traveled with him, but with the military, but it became too hard, and so she went back to her home, and he would take furloughs and go visit her until um, some illness came about in the family, and she needed to go to Europe for treatment, which uh, yeah, which was not happy for him, but and he would travel to visit in Italy as much as he was possible. Now, after graduation, he served in Mexico, and he did very well in Mexico. He was in the artillery, much like our Stonewall Jackson, General Stonewall Jackson, and what he learned in Mexico was he learned how, when you are outnumbered, to deceive and flank the forces that are greater than your own. This was something that he would then incorporate later during the Civil War, which we'll see in a few minutes. After Mexico, he came back, and we'll just kind of jump right up to the Civil War. And he, like many others, joined the signed up for the Confederacy with his state, Virginia. Now, I think that we had talked about this before in the past, but it's really important, I think, to understand that back then the your state was primary. So where you were born. So if you're a Virginian, that's what you identified as. If you were born in South Carolina, that's what you identified as. Nowadays, we think of ourselves as Americans. Whether or not you were born in South Carolina or Virginia or Pennsylvania, wherever it might be, uh, that identification of your state is a lot less strong. And so we could see in the books, the letters that are being written by a lot of the people in the Confederacy, Lee, Magruder, etc., Jackson, that this notion of serving your state was very, very important, and keeping big government away, big Fed away. So he did sign up for the Confederacy, and uh, he uh, where he made his name was during the Peninsula Campaign. So when General McClellan was marching his army up from the south of the peninsula, and Magruder successfully defended Yorktown. Now, what he did there, and I say successfully, he stalled McClellan's march, and he did that with two ways. The first was by utilizing the river and that was there, damming it, flooding it, so that the area became very marsh. The whole area was marshy to begin with, but now it's like really difficult to pass through. The second was the fortifications. He would move his infantry and his artillery from one location to another, giving the illusion that his forces were greater than what they actually were. At that time, I believe he had maybe 13,600 compared to McClellan's army of 121,000, so almost 10 to 1 odds. Now, this tactic was what Magruder learned during Mexico, and he was really able to successfully implement this so that the General Joseph Johnston was then able to move troops back and to defensive positions around Richmond, which we kind of reviewed in the previous podcast. So this was Magruder's tactics here were really important. Now, uh, General Joseph Johnston then had um, Magruder uh, retreat back to Williamsburg, and he had already in Williamsburg set up some defenses. In fact, there's a Fort Magruder that's there, and he unfortunately uh, had to. He needed to take some medical leave, and so uh, with that, then the general who came in to replace him, didn't really know all of the different. Even though he was, he got Magruder and him met and they went over the plans, but still, it's one thing when you're the person developing it all and another person kind of receiving it. It wasn't really completely understood, and so some of the trenches, etc., were actually then utilized by the Union Army as they came up. But in any event, um, Magruder was very successful in Yorktown. And on a complete different side note, what I hope we can do, I'm planning, and this is, of course, work allowing me, I want to go up to Williamsburg. We have a listener and a good friend of mine of the podcast where we go and take a look at some of these places and we'll film it and we'll do the podcast live. And we'll take a look at Williamsburg, Yorktown, and the different areas for both the Peninsula Campaign as well as the 7-day battles. So we'll do a big tour of that up there. But that's to come. So that's a tease. So, but hopefully we'll get that going. Okay, now after the success of Yorktown and Williamsburg, we get to the 7 days battle. Here, Magruder didn't do so well. We have a lot of things. We're going to go into the 7-day battle, so we'll get the details. But the orders were not received, didn't follow. Maybe he was drunk. We don't know. But Magruder's, his delay and all were a big problem. And like I said, well, next couple podcasts we'll go into the 7 days battles. But this whole issue of being drunk was never substantiated. Generally, never supported it. And could he be protecting Magruder? I don't know. I mean, Magruder had a reputation for being a partier, right? That's where he got the Prince John because he was very, he was a smooth talker, elegant, just everybody loved him, and he loved the socialization. So, could it have been that maybe he had a binge? Who knows? Uh, as far as being like a drunk, I don't see any other evidence of this. Now, remember, everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people back then, the drinkers, they would drink from morning to night. And that's different times. So unless you were a teetotaler who, completely abstained from alcohol, it was not uncommon. So when we look back at them, at the people back in the 18, this time frame, we will say, oh, yeah, geez, a whiz, of course they're drunks, drinking all day long. But it was a different time and place. And so we cannot take a 21st century lens and look back and try to judge. Um, I feel that if there would have been more accounts of his drinking, perhaps than there were, but again, this is all speculation on my part. There's really not a whole lot of evidence from Magruder directly, and what we get reports from other generals, and you just never know. It's like, just like I said with Lee, General Lee never supporting these charges of intoxicating, but being intoxicated, but then another general says he was. So, well, who is it? And were there like personal vendettas? Was one trying to protect the other, and one trying to get the other? And we don't know. So I would say that, looking at, when we get to the 7 Day battle, we'll investigate this a little bit more, because I think it was because that, when you there are lots of things going on, and then in the heat of battle, well, we'll come back to that. But because of this poor result, Magruder was then, President Davis then reassigned Magruder to Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. And here, actually, Magruder did really well. He lifted the blockade that was on Galveston, and so and that was a big deal. So there's a win. So we had like Yorktown was a win, a 7 Day battle, well, not a win. Getting go to Galveston has a win. So I don't know. It's kind of like, when you think about it, um, he kind of was average student at West Point, and kind of military career, kind of 50-50. I don't know. But yeah, he, after the war, then he went to Mexico, and he became a Mexican citizen, and he served with the emperor there up until the point when the emperor, like 1866 and 1867, had to abandon and had to leave. So then Magruder returned to the United States. So probably about a year, 2 years in Mexico, and he was on. He was coming back to the United States. He was a natural, right? He just was like, he spoke well. Um, his wife was very wealthy, from a wealthy family, and he actually talked a lot about his stint in Mexico. So, um, but he, his health was failing, and in 1871, uh, he he passed away. Uh, now, so not too much longer after Civil War, after going to Mexico, and just a couple more years, and he was gone. So, but he does give us a great, nice legacy. We love the name Prince John. Um, he, I think he may have gotten a bit of a bum rap, um, but I feel that he's definitely someone to, um, that I, of course, when I read about his life, I have a new respect for him. So I hope you all enjoyed the podcast today. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you again soon. Thanks a lot. Cheers.